All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to thank everyone for joining. I expect we'll have some others joining over time. And as a reminder, like our other webinars, we'll also have this posted for on-demand access later today, and we'll get you all a link of that. So I want to thank everyone for coming for our latest webinar on our Virtual Events Worth Having series for branding, marketing, and sponsorships. Our underlying theme here is in messaging. With in-person events, we had messaging before. We still have messaging now. It's really going to be a question of how it's done and not if to do it, like in so many of our things on these virtual events. For today's discussion, we want to thank our two panelists for joining us. Both come from very different backgrounds tied to conference and convention type work, as well as work outside of that market. I'm going to give a brief introduction and give a chance for self-introduction as well, if you want to give a little insight into your background and your company and experience. First, we've got Scarlett Rosier, who is the Director of Operations and co-founder of Rhyme and Reason Design. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the agency, which supports so many of our fraternity and sorority events, as well as non-event services. Hi, Scarlett.
Hello, thanks for the intro, Zach. Like Zach said, I'm Scarlett Rosier. My business partner and I founded Rhyme and Reason 12 years ago, which is crazy. And we have been working with Greeks and the nonprofit market, as well as tourism and communities since then. And we've had an opportunity to see all the transitions from 2008, which was a totally different world, to today, and working through all the branding, logistics, messaging, and campaign experiences that come along the way, from conferences to organizations to everything in between. So I'm looking forward to chatting with y'all today.
Thanks, Scarlett. Next, we've got Damian Grey, is the founder of FilmStory, which focuses, like the name implies, on storytelling through video. His team has worked with numerous clients, primarily in the Georgia and Florida area, but some beyond. Welcome, Damian.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. It's great to tag team this with Scarlett. I'm excited for it. Like Zach said, owner of FilmStory. We're 7 years into what we do. Simply put, we're a video production company that focuses on just helping businesses become much more clear on sharing who they are online. So that way they know for sure that they're sharing with confidence and reaching their potential client, potential customer, potential consumer with any of the marketing they put out. We handle most of the production work as far as the storytelling outline for it. And I'm kind of excited to be here. It's a little different. I don't do a lot of events in this genre, but as we're going to go into today, you'll see how a lot of the things that we talk about, even in preparing for things that you guys do a lot of, it's the same concept, the same messaging, the same marketing, the same thought process. And I'm excited to be a part of it. So thank you guys again for having me, Zach and Pix Point. And if for any reason you cannot hear me due to audio or video, please let me know.
Thanks, Damian. We appreciate both of our panelists joining us. We'll be bouncing between our panelists as we go through. Some of these may be one panelist, maybe some of them may be a topic that each of us are bouncing in on. And I'll be your host, Zach Roth from Pixel Point. We are the largest third-party AV services and production company in the Greek market, outside of in-house services. And we've been working with a growing number of fraternity and sorority groups, as well as nonprofits in the educational space. Pretty much all of our work from secondary, post-secondary, and professorship educational spaces. So I want to thank you all for joining us. And if you have any questions, you can send those in on the chat, or hold those to the end and we'll have a Q&A as well. So as we get started, again, our topic being on branding, marketing, and sponsorships. This is all about messaging. So we'll be starting with branding. And as we're looking at events and being in virtual events, we want to focus that building your brand is one of the reasons why we have events. And in that regard, we want to talk about how do we feel that, or how does our parents feel that branding has changed, or has it not changed? And is it as important as ever or not important? Why should we still have events virtually if we can't meet in person? Is it worthwhile anymore? Scarlett, based on our brief discussion before, we'll start with you.
Perfect. Sounds good. Sorry, and my screen just said I'm muted. Um, so branding is, I mean, that is our bread and butter. That is what we hang our hats on. Branding is so important. Even today, even in this strange Zoom world that we are living in this virtual space, it's actually more important that people know who you are, what you stand for, understand the experience. And the brand is, I know a lot of people think of the brand as, this is the logo mark, but it's so much more. A brand is every detail of your organization, of your experience. So from an organizational level, your brand is, your logo, your colors, your fonts, the words you use, the photos you take, the experiences that you share, and that how that filters out across all the different mediums. So conferences are the same way. So if you're branding your conference and you're creating this experience around it, it should be consistent, it should be cohesive, and it should still be something that people look at, know who you are, know what you're trying to accomplish with it, and be able to walk away and say, I know what they did, I know why they were here, I understand them, and when I see them out in real life, in digital life, in all of those experiences, I still can connect the dots through that brand, through that organization, and be able to continue to tell that story, even past that experience that I had in a convention, in a conference experience. So still, branding is still so important. People still remember who you are, what you stand for, and people remember that even more so now, I think, because the brands that are connecting right now are connecting really, really deeply, because people are looking for engagement. They're looking for connection. They're looking for engagement. They're looking for experiences. And if you are able to create those in, I hate the word authentic, but in an authentic, or an authentic and unique all mean kind of the same thing, but in a manner that really speaks to people and speaks to people in the places that they are right now. We have, in our own experience, I've noticed how much people are grasping for positive experiences and how much they're grasping for connection and ideas and sharing. So when, that is part of a conference, that's part of a brand. And if you can continue to provide that now, you will build that much more connection and engagement outside of this experience that we're in right now.
Thanks, Scarlett. Damian, did you have anything on that to add into that?
Yeah, I mean, as I'm thinking through some of the things, to answer the initial question, the core of it has not changed. Like Scarlett was saying, even more so during this time, a lot of the desire is for that intimate, getting very clear on reaching who you're trying to reach. And when I think about branding for events that you guys might host, the people that are tuning into this meeting, and the things that you're helping put together, a lot of the times there's a specific audience that you're bringing in, especially for this kind of Zoom meeting. There's a specific audience that's coming into the events that we're doing, coming into the events that you're hosting. And so when I think about being able to brand to those people before the event starts, or trying to reach people online before the event starts, or bringing people there, the heart behind it always comes to a specific problem that you guys are helping solve, or we'll probably talk a little bit more about soon, being able to bring their story into the event and making them feel a part of something bigger. So when you're talking about those things, the main heart behind it, when it comes to branding, when it comes to messaging, when it comes to all of those things, is being able to put yourself in their shoes and saying, what solution do you have for them? What's the problem that they're having? And if you're able to specifically identify that and specifically see how you can help meet that goal, how to help them come into this world with clarity and confidence and knowing what they're coming into, then you're automatically aiming towards that group of people. You're going directly to that person, that group, that tribe, that region of people, if you will, and that makes it that much more intimate. With the events like this that I've been hearing about, we're doing, again, I'm on the outside looking in, but when it comes to meeting those people and branding and reaching those people where they are, it's always about being able to see where they're at first and seeing how you supply a need for them. And so when you think about that and you get that core down, then you begin to unravel it and say, well, how do I bring that into their entire experience that they're coming into this event for, they're coming here for? How do I make it so that it's a once in a lifetime kind of a thing, and going from there? And then how do you do that on a virtual Zoom setting, any kind of, whatever kind of online thing you're using? How do you bring it into that kind of a setting? And that's where story comes in. That's where being able to getting rid of the distractions and having people or host or whoever it is actually get very intimate and focused on sharing the story that puts the audience in their shoes and able to bring them into the story, bring them into the situation. So yeah, I think it definitely hasn't changed. And if anything, it's getting more and more focused. And that's what I love, because it's very easy to find out who we're reaching. And there is a lot of noise out there, but I think it's getting more and more precise, if you will. So yeah.
Definitely. Thank you, Damon, and Scarlett. In particular, both of you were referring to elements around those personal stories and connections. Damian, specifically in your background in video, as we look at the virtual conferences being through in a video sense, not avatar and 3D environments, but events like this through Zoom, WebEx, or other ones. And we're talking to each other. I've got like the sun in my face, but we're talking to each other basically through a box, right? Or through a screen, almost like television, but interactive in a video conferencing sense. And I know that some people on our team, we are looking at this as an opportunity of how to kind of control that direction of our attendees and our viewers, of what they see, how they see it, because it's more focused. If you're participating, you are looking at this box. If you're not participating, you're outside, but you're not looking around the room. You're looking in this box. And does that give us some opportunities here to really bring personal stories to life through video inserts and special edited video packages, things like that, where it's not just live, but we can bring some of that programming in to our live audience through a video sense. And that's what I'm thinking really on your side, doing storytelling with on a personal basis, and like building out some of those kinds of personal stories and then bringing them into the conference space to share with everyone. What's your thought on that?
Yeah. To answer the question, yes, it's absolutely possible. It's absolutely 100%. Truthfully, in my perspective, I get some bias, necessary to have those sort of video edits or just something like that, where you're going through an event like this where it's all online. You're looking at a box, and truthfully, it's I think it's a win-win, because one, of course, it causes the person to be pretty much fully focused on this screen, on this screen, where they're able to completely interact with what's happening. And not only do they have the video, but they'll have a presenter or somebody to back up and give context to the story or to the video that they're watching. A lot of thinking about before how things were, of course, a lot of the videos that you'd see would be online, just social media or websites and things like that. And that's great. And that's still happening. And that will probably kind of always be happening for this time. But if you're bringing people in for a reason to a specific Zoom conference about a specific topic, then there's a reason why they're there. And if there's a reason why they're there, then hopefully the reason is because you've put a message out there sometime before that allowed them to be able to say, maybe they have the solution that I've been looking for. And so when you come to a Zoom conference like this and you have the full focused attention on your potential, I guess normally a potential customer, but a potential attendee that wants to subscribe to this community, then of course, you want to be able to, with clarity and confidence, share your messaging, with understanding, be able to empathize with that person and have content that is specifically refined to match what they're looking for and what they're wanting to capture. And the good news about it is it's not a difficult thing. It doesn't have to be something where you have to research months of trying to find, because you're trying to reach this one person or this specific group of people, and you're wanting to be able to, no matter if they're on the Zoom conference or whatever it is, your messaging, what you're saying is reaching them. You're not trying to be everything to everybody. You're trying to find the people that are actually interested in this event that you're hosting or in this conference that you're doing online. And so when you have that kind of a niche, it allows you to get rid of the distractions and get very clear on who you're trying to reach and the stories that you can share that brings them into the story. It's not a random marketing piece, buy one, get one 50% off. It's a specific, calibrated, edited, custom built piece of content that attracts that group of people or that person or that audience. And so I love the fact that when you're on here doing this Zoom thing like this or anything like this, that's all it is. And the content that you can speak of, especially in this day and age, can be clear, it can be to the point, it can be exactly what you needed to say, and you can also get great quality out of it. So I love that it gets rid of the distractions, and I love that it just gives people another opportunity to come right into the story loop and see what it is that we're about. So yeah, man, I'm all for it.
That is, when we are talking about the in-person, that is nicer where we can, just like the in-person events that, Scarlett and her team are more used to with the videos that we play about upcoming branding releases and upcoming location events and all those things. You do have that more focused audience. You can actually have them sit there longer than what's the typical the marketing sense. It's like
it's like
10
under 10
seconds or whatever it is. Yeah. It's like you don't got them, you lost them. So it is nice that you can actually kind of step back. You don't have to be so invasive and with your marketing, and because you do already have their attention. But that kind of your comments gives us a good segue when we're talking about marketing as a whole. And when we're looking at marketing for events, you've got kind of three phases, right? Pre-con, con, and post-con marketing. And so when we look at, going from in-person to virtual events, are there differences in these phases, in particular pre-con first, but is there differences or is it the same? Is there anything we need to consider that needs to be changed when going from virtual or going from in-person to virtual? Scarlett, I think that's kind of falls in your wheelhouse. What do you think about that?
Yeah, for sure. So similarly to the brand process and everything that you're going to do for conferences, in person, you always start with a strategy. There's always a plan of the conference is going to have this theme, this experience. These are the activities that we're going to do. These are the breakouts that we're going to offer. This is the overall message that we want people to walk away with once they are done with that conference. We want them, before it, we were telling everyone, this is the experience, this is what to expect, this is who's going to be there, these are who's going to be speaking. And then in the conference, those are the actual experiences themselves. And then post-conference is recapping, making sure everyone enjoyed the experience. And that hasn't changed. You should still have a strategy in place for pre-conference, conference, and post-conference. You should have your communications cadence already structured out. You should know what the main topics are. It should have the same consistency from brand to words to look to feel to the entire experience. But I think, oftentimes for pre-conference, and I think we can still be doing so much for pre-conference and post-conference that we already have done. It's the actual conference point that gets a little bit different, because you don't have those magic moments of running into someone in a line to get a drink at the bar, or running next to someone on the treadmill, even if you don't want to sweat next to someone that you work with. But still, that moment, those magic moments that you are unplanned and unexpected, you don't get those as much in this Zoom experience. But the pre and post, you can still be sending e-blasts. You can still be sending marketing materials that are, agendas. You can send tangible pieces, and you can send digital pieces, and you can still have, the website with the landing page that allows you to sign up, and the social media posts that go out that announce the conference, and the stories, and all of those experiences can still be happening because you're still encouraging people to participate. And that should be happening whether you're doing digital online experiences or, in person, or as we get further down the line, hybrid pieces. You should still be having all of those elements at the start of that experience to get people used to it. But when you're at the conference these days, some of the things that would be really that I think are opportunities are, sending boxes or kits so that people can be interactive on the experience of the conference, because that feels like, oh, this is one of the main, key conference speakers is focused on X, and you can always send a box to attendees that has X in it, and then that's a magic moment that you would have ordinarily received in conference, but you are getting it at home. Or there are opportunities where you can have mini breakouts, so you can actually speak and have small engagement moments on Zoom. And I think that's where the conference experiences have to shift a bit, because you oftentimes you get online, you sit through the experience, you watch it, and then you leave, and you never had a chance to really interact with anyone else. And oftentimes we don't even see people's faces, so you've not really created that connection other than their name, and maybe you can LinkedIn stalk them later. So figuring out ways that are in the conference to create those engagement, create those breakout moments, and allow for conversations and those opportunities to take shape that we often miss out on because we're not in person. And then the same on the back end with the post-conference of still doing the digital materials, still thanking people for coming, still creating those tangible and intangible experiences that are digital, and also, that you get in the mail too, because people are getting fatigued from being on digital. So I think now more than ever, people are also looking to things that they receive and they can touch and they can feel, because we haven't touched, we haven't felt, we haven't had those experiences either. So that's also something to really think about as we are all getting really digitally drained. There are opportunities to connect outside of that.
All right.
Yeah, definitely. In particular, as we're looking at that range, I know you were talking about heavy on the pre-con and post-con. When you look at the marketing and the communication, maybe it's not really necessarily marketing, but the communication aspect for the conference experience. When we look at in-person conferences, you might have some text message notifications, you might have some emails, but largely a lot of your communication is on site in a physical presence. Signage in the venue pointing which way to go, advertising items, communication that's actually given in sessions, or someone yelling in the hallway, whatever it is that kind of gets those words out on site, right? And when you're doing a virtual conference, many times it's more than just one session. And so you're either bouncing between sessions, or you're leaving and you're returning later. And so how do we change, or do we need to change our communication methods when we're doing virtual, so that our attendees don't feel like they've turned off the meeting and they're gone? It's this on, off, they take a break to go to the bathroom or get lunch and they're gone. Like, how do we keep it relevant without overly annoying them?
That the $1 million question. Damian, if you have an idea, you can jump in, or I can jump in.
I got you. No, I mean, truthfully, I have to, there's two parts to it, I guess, in my thinking. I have to know, and I have to go by the fact that if they are coming in, they're coming in for a reason, so that they're wanting to get the content, and wanting to be a part of this group that is having the online event. So there's that half of it. And the other half of it is, one of the main things about pretty much anything that I've done online, that we do online, that maybe a lot of you guys have also learned online, is with all these things, consistency is key. I love the ability to create content that it's not a big hoopla, but it's short, sweet content that continues to just kind of, I won't say nag at them, but just continues to let them know that this is here and that this is something that can be an awesome solution for them in whatever situation they're in, as far as if they're wanting to join the meeting. So my initial thoughts are just that, being able to, at the end of the day, yes, they're going to click end. At the end of this meeting, we're all going to click end off of the Zoom conference thing. And so for us, we want to be able to continue to engage with the people that are there. And I always like the opportunity to create little video snippets afterwards that's saying, hey, so glad that you guys were here. If you're wanting more information, visit here. We're going to come out with a whole new series after this. Scarlett was talking about creating a marketing plan for it. A lot of the times, as I'm pretty sure Joseph and Zach have kind of ran into, the hardest times are the pre and the post of these events. During, everything is clockwork. It's going as it should be. But how are we preparing to bring the people in, and how are we preparing to keep them in after the event is over? And a lot of the times I always think about those things first before I even go into a lot of the meat of the event. So if there's a good plan that's able to, after the event is over, keep people entertained, keep people invested into the heart behind what we're doing, and also giving them continual updates with things they can be a part of, I think that's valuable. I think that's worth something. I think that's worth being able to put in the content for. And what I've learned is it doesn't have to be on a red $60,000 camera setup. It could be something that's very simple to film, as long as the content is clear, it's quick, and it's very relatable to the person that's watching it. So that's what I think.
But I like red.
Me too.
Okay. And when we're talking about materials, I kind of hinted on this on in-person communication, but Scarlett, I know your team does a lot with this on floor clings, elevator wraps, hanging banners, programs, shirts, giveaways, books, all of those tangible materials. And that's something that there's kind of two thoughts I have here. One, tangible materials, it gives you kind of that personal connection. I think you sort of touched on that. And then the second is the idea of seeing something, maybe not tangible something, but the idea that you're seeing something that has that theme on it, the colors, the branding, the imagery that makes you feel connected with it. So part of it's the in-hand aspect, and part of it is the not necessarily in-hand aspect, but furthers your feeling like this is not just a weekly meeting, right? This is something bigger, something something noteworthy to really pay attention to. So as we're looking at virtual, what are our options in terms of putting something in their hand to create that tangible aspect that you just can't replicate without touch? And then what are the avenues, through email, virtual portal systems, mobile apps, all those other aspects, as far as the slides, all those pieces that you can do virtually that further that imagery?
Sure. Great. Great question. And I was also thinking that even when Damian was talking about getting people engaged in the boxes on Zoom, that oftentimes, even for us, if someone on my team says that they're going to attend a webinar, I tend to be more interested in attending it because you know that you can talk about it with them later. So I think that's also a really interesting opportunity for some of your groups, is to almost make a buddy system that someone else is going to attend this with you. And then that keeps that conversation going, almost similarly to when you're learning a language and you need to be able to continue to speak it. If you have someone else that you can speak with, you actually are more likely to learn it. So similar concept for even in conferences, if you have a buddy person or someone to connect with continuously to keep you coming back, is a really cool opportunity, I think, that you could create in some of these conferences moving forward. But as far as those tangible pieces and those pieces that are part of, the in-person experience where you're stepping on floor mats, floor clings, and going through elevator doors that are your brand, it's really incredible to see in person, but digitally, those screens that go behind you oftentimes look crazy and make your head look weird. So I think that branding was initially a really good idea, but it's turned into something that, unless you have a green screen, tends to be a little weird. So some opportunities, if you are actually hosting it as a community, then you could even get some of those banners and signage to be behind the main speaker. Similarly, Damon has his brand right behind him, which is a really great opportunity to always remember what his name of his brand is, FilmStory. So those are, thinking through who's the primary speaker and what's their background, and how you can create some of that experience with pop-up banners or hanging signs. I think some other things are, when everyone's coming in, you could have a really nice video playing that brings in that content and experience with music and story and animated logo and all of that to even kick things off. And then the presenters or the speakers have backgrounds that match their brand. And then, whoever's presenting can then have those presentation materials. Just because we're not in a room together, PowerPoint still plays everywhere, or Keynote, or any of those systems. So you can still have those really branded screens even when you're talking through them, and you can go off screen or on screen. So you have those key components of the digital brand. And I think you can also play them out across different channels. So social media and all of those experiences can still have those brand elements. As far as tangible as, the person that's sitting at home watching this screen and seeing everyone's branded materials behind them, some of the things that get people excited is, if you're having an experience, you can send people cookies or treats while they watch, and that they're going to be, kind of like you're in a movie theater. People are going to have snacks. People are going to have those experiences. So you could send them those elements that make them more engaged in the process, especially if you're like, hey, we'll send you a treat if you come. Most people are willing to do something because you've sent them something. It's a really old social psychology experience of, if I send you $1, you're willing to fill out this survey. Or if I say you're going to get a gift card, you're usually more likely to do something. So if you do that in the conference experience, you send them the snack, and especially collegiate students who you still want to eat, you still want something yummy. So you can still send branded packages. You can still send those t-shirts at the end of the conference. You can still send a package of conference wrap up. And you can even do that prior to. You could even send little, note cards 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out, here's some tidbits that maybe all build up to a scavenger hunt that you talk about once you're in the conference, or all are building on the bigger experience, or puzzle pieces that at the end you finally have the full puzzle. Really building out those pieces that gets people excited prior to, keeps them invested during, and has them still talking about it afterwards. Because at conferences, you're taking photos of each other, you're taking photos of the experience. I'm not usually going to take a photo of myself sitting in my chair at home, but if I got this really cool basket of things, I'm probably going to take a photo of it and be like, look what they sent me. It's really awesome. And that builds that social engagement too. So again, it comes down to planning. It comes down to that strategy and what your ultimate goals are for communication and where you want to take it. I think it's paralyzed by the fear of the unknown, but there are so many opportunities now to really break that third wall that we haven't done for so long, because people are in the office or they're in a conference, but now you're hitting people at home. And if you can hit them well, I don't want to say hit them, if you can engage with them well, you really have the opportunity to have a long-standing relationship with them. So I think there are so many different pieces that you can use throughout the entire process, and you don't have to give away, there's not, people spend millions of dollars on conferences, and you don't have to spend travel, you don't have to book the conference hall anymore. So investing some of those dollars in some pieces that are that are more tangible, that connect with people more quickly or in their place, I think those are really great opportunities to create engagement that we haven't been doing in the past.
Yeah, definitely. I noticed, noted on two of the items that you brought up, I wanted to touch on. One was viewing as a group. This is one of the things I think that came up during our first webinar in the series, and we think is a great idea on furthering that personal connection. The piece that you miss out by not being with other people, that even when you're with people online, just doesn't feel the same as, you know, sitting in a room with them. The idea, especially in the chapter-based organizations, for those schools where those in the chapter are able to physically meet together safely, having them join certain sessions, like a opening session, things like that, as a group on a single web camera, can give that feeling of togetherness, and also can make them feel both a sense of not only participation with their friends and their brothers or sisters, but also a sense of commitment to the people in their own personal circle to continue participating and engaging in the conference. So it's a good way to get people to commit if it's going to be a long weekend or things like that, and even they're going to be participating individually because they came together. But it does kind of help bridge that sense of togetherness, other than just a grid of videos in a Zoom call. I know we've got some groups looking at that. Also, you brought up selfies from home, and I think this comes back to my part of our underlying view when you're looking at these events in the associated market, and how do you bring those personal stories to life? You know, like Damian was talking about earlier. Not to call out one particular, but Alpha Phi just had their 150th biennium kickoff. I think this is year 148, so it's the beginning of their biennium for 150, and they did a big reveal using the revealer with all the submitted photos. But even that doesn't have a huge, that technology makes you feel like you're part of that bigger group, but it doesn't really bring out your personal story. But having those submitted pictures from home, from Chapter House, from anywhere, of you with another person, you with another person at a 6-foot distance, having some of those things submitted, I think, can really help bring those virtual events to life and bring out that personal story better. And I'm sure, Damian, if you want to chime in, I'm sure yours would be take a short video, right? Send in some of those and let us highlight those so we can see you. We can make you feel a part of this, and get that kind of collective image and feel of who we all are.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's not much to add to that in my thinking. I mean, just being able to have those clips, and like we said, it doesn't have to be a person sitting in front of a camera on a stool sharing their life story from birth to now. It's really those moments that are captured with those groups, and there's certain areas, and being able to, when all of those things happen cumulatively, then it's inevitable that belongingness feeling will be there, and that's the end goal, to be able to have that sensation of you're beginning to belong to something that's larger than just yourself. And yeah, I think that's a cool idea. Even when you were sharing what they were doing, I was like, that was probably pretty cool. And whether it was, I couldn't tell sure if you were saying it was something that was an actual physical thing that they did, or if it was just all digital, like some sort of animation or something that they did. But either way, I'm an advocate of that. That's pretty cool.
Joseph or Scarlett might remember the name of the service, but for Damian, I don't know if you've seen it. It's you have people through this website submit photos, like selfies of themselves, things like that, and the computer system does some graphics alterations to them, as well as, I'm not sure if it picks and chooses, but it creates an overlying mosaic image. So over the course of time, each photo appears as a small tile, and then over time, your new logo reveal or whatever it is comes out from this mosaic that is forming. And in an in-person event, it's a cool effect because you can have people at the event submitting these photos over the course of the day.
Oh, cool.
And then you see the mosaic like revealing over time.
Yeah.
In this case, people are at home, but it's people from their chapter houses, on campus, at home, submitting those photos.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it doesn't give you a whole lot of depth into the story, but it does make you feel like you're part of that bigger group. But
Right.
any way that we can have it where people feel like, I think there's two sides to it. The side of, I feel like I'm a part of this because I'm seeing, I'm seeing things, I'm participating, I'm actually engaging with it and not just sending in a question or thinking about a material in an engaging way, but actually participating and contributing to that event. And then the other side of the people who are receiving that content thinking, that person's like me. I relate to that. I, it's either something that I want to move in that direction, or I just, they're just like me and I'm not alone out there. I'm part of this bigger family in a relatable way. And that's where I really feel getting those personal stories out there that are relatable helps us all feel like we're not just one person on the other end of a webcam, but we're all, and it's something that I think is more natural for us as humans when we see someone in person and we say, we feel like we're a collective. And when you're in virtual, it's sometimes hard to get that feeling of connection. I think, I see Scarlett nodding your head. I know, Scarlett, you were talking about that earlier with that personal connection, whether it's a tangible piece or whether it's just in person seeing web cameras. So if there's ways through photo submissions, video submissions, personal stories, some people meeting together and participating, but simply the first step of having that event not being canceled, having that event where we all still meet and do see each other, get that reach into our organizations to feel like we are part of, we're still a part of that. It hasn't gone away. It's still there even though we are socially distant. And this is also a temporary item, but we don't want to lose the year. And I think that's part of this whole video series is we don't want to lose the year by just canceling everything, saying we'll pick it up when the pandemic's over. It's like, no, this is still our life. I mean, we're still living it day to day, right? We don't just turn it off for a year or two and then come back to it later. It'll just be different. And how it'd be different. I want to move into our last section, so we still have a little bit of time for Q&A. Thank you, Joseph, he chimed in. It's Luster Mosaics. I know some of the groups that are on watching may already be familiar with it, but anyone who's not, it was called Luster Mosaics. The last section on sponsorships. Now, this is a bit different, but it's still focused on communication and messaging. Many of our conferences, they're not expos. So in an expo system, you've got all these vendors and the attendees are coming because they want to see the vendors. And usually in a financial model, the vendors are the ones paying the tab on it. The tickets are free or cheap relative to the costs involved. And people are just wandering around the expo hall trying to figure out what new product, new service, whatever it is that I can use and take home with me. As well as, of course, all the free little knickknacks like the squeeze ball rockets and the dart people you can throw at the wall and all those fun things. Most of our events are not expos, right? They're conferences. So the focus on the financial side everyone's used to is the cost per attendee. You're attending to get the content, the training, the inspiration, the whatever it is. It's between the conference organizers and the attendees, not the exhibitors. However, many of our events have exhibitors. It may just be a handful of groups. It may be a table in the hallway. Some of our events have sponsors. They may be sponsoring a session, the conference itself, breakouts, banquets. They may be sponsoring different things to help reduce the cost. And on their value, when we think about these sponsors, their desire is to get out in front of these people, to get their image out, their name out, further their name and brand recognition and reputation, to do lead generation, to find out who's interested, who's not, to start building those relationships or continue those relationships so that they can, to increase that. If we're looking at national conferences, I know this starts to get really specific, but if we're looking at national conferences where the attendees are collegiate members in a fraternity or sorority, they're looking at services that they can bring back to their chapters, whether it's for composites, jewelry, training aspects, swag, materials, anything in that kind of realm that helps them at that chapter level. But regardless of any kind of conference you have, if you have sponsors or exhibitors, their goal is to get out in front of your attendees. And part of the challenge in a virtual event is, and we've seen this, we're exhibitors and we've done sponsorships, we've been exhibited at trade shows. It's really hard in a virtual sense to just step out in front of someone, not saying we ever do that. But when you're trying to like talk to someone as they're coming by and saying, here, put your business card in a hat for a drawing. Let me tell you about what we do. And you're kind of exploring that. Most of our conferences, the attendees aren't as interested in exploring an exhibit hall. So what we want to look at is how do we still, if the sponsors' value in the conference is to get out in front of those attendees and to do lead generation and to to start building those relationships, but we know our attendees are not there to explore an exhibit hall, then I feel like what we need to do is get those sponsors strategically as conference organizers in front of those attendees. There's ideas that we have of introductions to sessions, whether they're pre-recorded or live, getting those names as sponsors on sessions, the email communication, the other things. But I want to get any thoughts that you have on how we can keep value to sponsors so that the sponsors keep on sponsoring and keep on providing as exhibitors value to the attendees, because it's not just the money we're after, right? It's also what they offer. We want to make sure that our attendees have those items available to them in a meaningful way. And if they're just going to skip out of an exhibit hall, it's not meaningful. So how do we put those sponsors in front of those attendees? And I feel like that's all really comes under a marketing umbrella. Scarlett, do you want to start with that one?
Sure thing. So I'm going to sound like a broken record by the time this is done, but really, for sponsors and for people who are on the flip side, we too have a strategy and a marketing plan in place when we're going to go to conferences. So we know what we're going to take, we know and we're already doing those e-blasts. So for conferences, if you have sponsors and that's how you're reliant on getting people engaged, making sure that those sponsors have the emails and the contact information prior to the event so that they can be sending out contacts and information and e-blasts and connecting with people prior to it, and even setting up meetings while they're, during the conference space, and allowing for some breakpoints for meetings in the conference space. I think some other ways are, videos beforehand, videos after events, even if you can't speak. And then again, kind of those magic moments where you get to meet people in different spaces. If you're in, a group and you can do the Zoom breakouts where there's 4 people or 5 people in a breakout room, those you get more personal experiences. So, giving opportunities for everyone to be involved in smaller conversations, I think hugely helps with connections and creating those opportunities. I think also, adding people's brands to all the materials that you're already doing for the conference promotion. So you're already sending out e-blasts, you're already sending out tangible pieces, you're talking about people on social media. If you're also including those sponsors the same way that you were before, it doesn't mean that you stop talking about them. It means that you integrate them into that communications plan pre-conference day and post, so that they're still getting all of that brand awareness and continuing to build that recognition. And then the sponsor themselves has the access to the attendees in a different manner, but they're still getting those opportunities to connect with them prior to it by sending out their own e-blasts and experiences. Maybe even, for us, we oftentimes plan dinners or happy hours or something like that with our, contacts at the conference. And if we had their information prior to, we could also set up, happy hours and send a cocktail making list, or create, sponsor a yoga session where you have those moments to say, like, we did this together, or like another way to create that kind of engagement that you often get at conferences because you're there and you're having those experiences, but you can still do them in small manners here as long as you have the access and you're giving the sponsors and the people that that are A, they're helping you, B, they're building their business, giving them those opportunities to create more opportunities for themselves too within it.
Agreed. Um, I'll add real quick, just the thought I had. Again, this thing in particular isn't something that we have a lot of experience with, but what we do have a lot of experience with is being able to very specifically see how the plan that we create for the filming project that we're doing for whichever business or whichever client is a win-win for both parties. So if I'm thinking about wanting to have sponsors for an event that I'm hosting, then my initial thought is going to be, what are some things that we're going to be having in this Zoom event or in this online conference that will require a third party, that will require something else outside of our in-house production. And at the same time, what are some things that provider needs that we can help them provide as well? So it kind of it gives me the opportunity to think mentally outside of my own shoes, and once again seeing how I can serve this other client or this other sponsor, and at the same time it becomes a kind of a win-win for both. And that really goes a long way when you're able to get outside of yourself for a second and be able to see how you can actually help that person next to you. So instead of begging or having that feeling of begging, it's actually a partnership where both I was going to say profit, but both kind of have a great experience going through the conference as a whole. And that's something that takes a good bit of thinking beforehand. You can't think about it the day before the event and think, oh, okay, let's try to get this. But it really takes an inclusive mindset to kind of bring that on. So that's what came to mind as well.
Yeah, and that's true. Thanks, Damian. I think many times we do look at sponsors and exhibitors as tagging along for the ride. They're not part of our organization. They're not part of our collective, our attendees. They're creeping in to grab those, what they want out of it, and
Right.
Something cold. We want their money and they want their leads, but they're not part of us. They're separate,
Right.
and it helps sometimes to think that every group involved in a conference has something that they desire out of it. Attendees have their goals, the conference organizers have their goals, trainers or inspirational speakers have their goals, sponsors and exhibitors have their goals. And there's still all the cohesive that binds it all together is they still want a successful event, and working together on understanding each other's goals. If we can understand the sponsor's goals better, if they have specific ones or general ones, if we can understand the attendees' goals, the organizers' goals, the presenters' goals, it helps us as a group collectively create an event that everyone benefits from, including at the end of the day, the attendees. If you've got exhibitors and sponsors who are there, the attendees miss out on, then it doesn't help them. So I think that's the idea here is keeping it visible, keeping it inclusive, that everyone feels they can engage and get value out of it. We are just about out of time. I really want to thank our panelists. If anyone has any questions they want to put in on the Q&A, please go ahead and send those in. Of course, we'll also be, if anyone has any questions after the fact, we will be happy to address those, answer those, get those out to the panelists or whatnot, and get them back to you. But we'll give a minute for if anyone has any questions they want to send in. I do want to say that kind of the underlying viewpoint here, I know that we wanted to convey, is that the marketing and the content, the messaging, it may be a little bit different as we're going through the different phases of the event, before, after, during. Some of the items are going to be different. A virtual portal system is going to need graphics, it's going to need coloring, brand additions, logo additions, all those kinds of things. And you're not going to have that elevator wrap. So you got some things that are new, some things that are removed. You're going to have some things that are consistent, like Scarlett was mentioning, the emails, your website marketing your event, postcards and other things that you may be mailing out. Some of those things like conference boxes may be new. Some of you are already doing conference boxes for swag items and things beforehand, but now you might have a strategic angle to it where you've got materials programmed against your event programming, which might be a little bit different. So there's some things that are new, some things that have been removed, and a lot of things that are still the same. So we really want to focus that that you can that focus on the things that have changed, but there's still so much that remains the same, which makes it not so daunting. With that, I want to thank you all for joining us. I know it's been a busy and crazy week this week, being election week. People have very strange work schedules or personal schedules. So thank you for your time. For those of you who are able to join us later on demand, thank you for joining us. Please send in any questions and comments to us, and we will get those addressed out to the panelists and back for you. If there's any specifics there, we'll get those addressed for you. If there's anything we can do to help you with your upcoming event, and including any of our panelists can help you with your upcoming event needs, please reach out. We'll be happy to get you answers from any of the three of us, answers, information, and of course, support. And remember, virtual events are worth having. We all believe that. So thank you for joining us, and have a great rest of your week.